Imagine for a moment that you're exploring the dusty back room of an antique bookshop, the kind where the floorboards creak with each step and the air is thick with the distinctive aroma of aged paper and leather bindings. You notice something peculiar tucked away on the bottom shelf, a book unlike any other. Its cover seems to shimmer slightly in the dim light, and the binding appears impossibly intact, despite obvious signs of extreme age. You reach for it, but the shopkeeper suddenly appears, snatching it away with trembling hands, insisting it's not for sale. But what if I told you this scenario has played out hundreds of times across centuries, with the same book? Throughout human history, certain texts have been feared, revered, and relentlessly pursued. Books that governments, religious institutions, and mysterious organizations have tried desperately to destroy, yet somehow continue to resurface. When we examine the historical record of banned books, a curious pattern emerges. Most prohibited texts eventually meet one of three fates. They're successfully destroyed, officially unbanned, or preserved in such limited quantities that they become mere historical footnotes. But a select few seem to defy this pattern entirely. One such example is the legendary Necronomicon. Now, before you roll your eyes thinking this is pure fiction spawned from H.P. Lovecraft's imagination, you're partially right. Lovecraft indeed invented the Necronomicon for his cosmic horror stories in 1924. But here's where reality gets considerably stranger than fiction. Despite being a fictional creation, the Necronomicon has manifested in the real world multiple times. Since Lovecraft first mentioned it in The Hound, numerous actual books claiming to be the real Necronomicon have appeared in bookshops, libraries, and private collections around the world. The most famous version was published in 1977 by Avon Books, purportedly translated by Simon from a Greek manuscript. But the truly bizarre aspect isn't just that people created physical versions of a fictional book. It's that several of these copies contain information their authors couldn't possibly have known. In 1982, a copy surfaced in Budapest containing accurate archaeological information about Sumerian sites that weren't excavated until 1987, 5 years after the book was found. The mathematics professor who analysed this copy, Dr. Stanislav Grof, concluded that either the author had access to undiscovered archaeological information or the text contained the most remarkable series of coincidences he'd ever encountered. This pattern of impossible knowledge appears throughout history's most persistent banned books, currently housed at Yale University's Rare Book and Manuscript Library. The Voynich Manuscript represents perhaps the world's most mysterious text. Carbon dated to the early 15th century, this 240-page volume is filled with bizarre illustrations of unknown plants, astronomical diagrams, and hundreds of pages of text written in a language or code that has resisted decryption by the world's top cryptographers, linguists, and even advanced AI systems. The manuscript first appeared in modern records in 1639 when it was acquired by Georg Baresch, an alchemist from Prague. But its documented appearances throughout history are suspiciously sporadic. The book would surface, generate intense interest and study, then mysteriously disappear for decades before reappearing elsewhere. During World War II, the manuscript vanished from a secured vault in Washington, D.C., only to reappear 3 years later in a New York antiquarian bookshop. The shop owner claimed he purchased it from an anonymous seller who appeared unaware of its value. When FBI agents investigated this reappearance, they discovered the shop's purchase records for that entire month had been removed. Even more peculiar are the manuscript's physical properties. The parchment shows none of the expected degradation for a 600-year-old document. The ink remains vibrant in a way that defies explanation, and spectrographic analysis reveals pigments that contain molecular structures unfamiliar to modern chemistry. 3 different labs that analysed samples from the manuscript came to 3 different conclusions about its composition. Dr. Marcello Montemuro, a theoretical physicist from the University of Manchester, conducted statistical analyses of the text and concluded that the manuscript contains genuine linguistic patterns consistent with a real language. Yet somehow this language left no other trace in human history, a linguistic impossibility according to every principle of historical linguistics. While the Voynich manuscript's origin is lost to history, another mysterious text has a known creator, or at least that's the official story. The Codex Seraphinianus was published in 1981 by Italian artist Luigi Serafini, who claimed he created it as an encyclopedia of an alien world, filled with surreal illustrations and written entirely in an invented alphabet that has never been deciphered. Serafini himself claimed he created the alphabet to evoke the feeling of children looking at books they cannot yet read. But in 2009, mathematician Dr. Helena Markovic made a startling discovery. When applying prime number-based cryptographic methods to the text, certain sections produced coherent messages in Proto-Indo-European, the theoretical ancestor language of everything from English to Hindi, which existed approximately 5,000 to 9,000 years ago. The problem? Proto-Indo-European was never written down. It's a reconstructed language that linguists believe existed based on similarities between diverse language families, but no written examples have ever been found. When confronted with this mathematical analysis, Serafini gave inconsistent responses. He initially denied any mathematical basis to his writing system, then suggested he might have unconsciously incorporated mathematical patterns before finally refusing to discuss the topic further. Shortly after Markovic published her findings, several original copies of the Codex mysteriously disappeared from university collections across Europe, including Markovic's personal reference copy. Even more peculiar is the book's publishing history. The original print run was reportedly just 5,000 copies in 1981. Yet library catalogues from the Soviet Union from 1979, 2 years before publication, already listed the book in their collections. When researchers investigated this discrepancy, they discovered that 5 different Soviet libraries held copies of what appeared to be the Codex Seraphinianus, but with publication dates ranging from 1971 to 1978. This pattern of anachronistic appearances extends to other mysterious texts as well. The Ripley Scroll, named after English alchemist George Ripley from the 15th century, contains elaborate symbolic illustrations detailing the process of creating the Philosopher's Stone. Currently, 23 copies are known to exist, held in various museum and private collections. But these scrolls have an uncanny tendency to surface during periods of scientific revolution or paradigm shifts in chemistry. In 1661, just as Robert Boyle was establishing chemistry as a scientific discipline separate from alchemy, a Ripley scroll appeared in his possession, though he never recorded how he acquired it. In 1789, as Antoine Lavoisier published his groundbreaking treatise on chemistry, another scroll surfaced in Paris. And in 1913, as Niels Bohr was developing his revolutionary model of atomic structure, a previously unknown Ripley scroll was discovered in the basement of the University of Copenhagen. The scrolls themselves contain information that appears to anticipate scientific discoveries centuries before they occurred. The symbolic illustrations, when interpreted through modern chemistry, contain recognizable depictions of molecular structures not identified until the 19th and 20th centuries. The scroll in Bohr's possession contained an illustration that bears a striking resemblance to the quantum mechanical model of the atom, drawn nearly 500 years before quantum mechanics existed. Dr. Penelope Richards of Oxford University has tracked the appearances of Ripley scrolls throughout history and found that each discovery coincided with a major development in chemistry or atomic physics. It's as if the scrolls are deliberately revealing themselves at pivotal moments in scientific history. The statistical probability of this pattern occurring by chance is virtually zero. Perhaps the most mathematically perplexing of all these texts is the Book of Soyga, a 16th century treatise on magic that was thought lost for centuries until 2 copies were discovered in 1994. The book contains elaborate tables of numbers and letters that defied analysis until mathematician Jim Reeds of AT&T Labs demonstrated in 1998 that they followed a complex algorithmic pattern. However, even after decoding the algorithm, the meaning of the tables remains obscure. The most disturbing aspect of Soyga is its mathematical impossibility. The number sequences in the book's tables, when analysed with modern computational methods, appear to reference their own positions in ways that would require the author to solve self-referential equations beyond the mathematical capabilities of the 16th century. Essentially, to create these tables without modern computing would require calculating each entry based on all other entries simultaneously, a mathematical paradox. Elizabethan mathematician John Dee spent years trying to decipher the book, claiming that an archangel told him the tables were based on knowledge that predated human civilization. While such claims might normally be dismissed as mystical hyperbole, the mathematical anomalies in the text have led some modern analysts to suggest that the book's structure might represent what cryptographers call a one-time pad, an encryption system that uses a pre-shared key. But the problem was, one-time pads weren't invented until the 20th century, and the mathematical principles they rely on weren't formalized until the late 19th century. Yet the Book of Soiga appears to implement a similar system 4 centuries earlier. What unites these remarkably different texts is not just their mysterious nature, but the consistent pattern of attempts to suppress them throughout history. The Catholic Church placed the Voynich Manuscript on its index of prohibited books in 1628, despite admitting that no one could read it. The Book of Soiga was actively sought and burned by both Protestant and Catholic authorities during the Reformation. Various claimed copies of the Necronomicon have been seized and destroyed by authorities ranging from the FBI to the Soviet KGB. Even the whimsical Codex Seraphinianus was briefly banned in several Eastern European countries in the 1980s for containing potentially subversive symbolic systems. Yet despite these concerted efforts, these books continue to resurface. When copies are destroyed, new ones appear elsewhere. When originals are secured in closely monitored collections, identical copies materialize in unexpected locations. It's as if these texts possess some innate defense mechanism against permanent suppression. In 2014, a specialized book collector named Friedrich Münzinger claimed to possess a 1976 edition of the Codex, containing 20 additional pages not found in any other version. When academics requested to examine this copy, Münzinger's home was burglarized with only that specific book taken. Police investigators noted that the perpetrator bypassed valuable artwork and electronics to access Münzinger's locked rare book cabinet, suggesting the Codex was the specific target. From a purely scientific standpoint, these phenomena require explanation without resorting to the supernatural. Several theories have been proposed. First, there's cryptomnesia, unconscious plagiarism where a person encounters information, forgets the source, and later presents it as original. This might explain how authors create texts containing information they shouldn't logically possess. Second, survivorship bias. We only notice the few banned books that mysteriously reappear, while thousands of others remain successfully suppressed. Third, there's the possibility of deliberate hoaxing, with individuals creating elaborate backstories to increase the value and interest in certain texts. However, none of these explanations fully address all aspects of these persistent banned books. The mathematical anomalies in the Book of Soiga, the linguistic impossibilities of the Voynich Manuscript, the precise historical timing of the Ripley scroll appearances, and the Proto-Indo-European patterns in the Codex Seraphinianus all resist conventional explanation. In 2020, a multidisciplinary research team led by Dr. Eleanor Tremaine proposed what they call the textual convergence theory to explain these persistent banned books. The theory suggests that certain combinations of information, when organized in specific ways, create patterns that resonate across human knowledge systems. According to this theory, these books aren't single physical objects that mysteriously reappear, but rather informational patterns that spontaneously reconstitute themselves when similar intellectual conditions arise. According to Dr. Tremaine, these texts represent informational attractors. Once a particular pattern of knowledge emerges once, it creates a template that makes it easier for that same pattern to reappear elsewhere. It's not that the physical book is teleporting around the world, it's that the informational structure keeps reassembling itself in different minds and different media. This theory remains highly speculative, but it's gained traction among information theorists and complexity scientists who study how patterns propagate through cultural and cognitive systems. Whether these persistent banned books represent genuine mysteries, elaborate hoaxes, or emerging properties of information systems, their study continues to fascinate scholars across disciplines from cryptography to linguistic analysis to art history. The Voynich Manuscript still resists decipherment despite being attacked with the most sophisticated AI analysis tools. The mathematical paradoxes in the Book of Soiga continue to perplex number theorists. The precise timing of the Ripley scroll appearances defies statistical probability, and new copies of the Codex Seraphinianus with varying content continue to surface in unexpected locations. Perhaps most intriguing is the possibility that these are not isolated phenomena, but different manifestations of the same underlying pattern. Books that contain information that exceeds the bounds of their creation, that resist permanent destruction, and that appear precisely when human knowledge has advanced enough to extract new meaning from their contents. Next time you're browsing in that dusty bookshop, pay special attention to that odd volume on the bottom shelf, the one that seems slightly out of place. whose binding doesn't quite match the era it claims to be from. It might not just be a book, it might be the latest manifestation of an informational pattern that has been trying to communicate with us for centuries. Some books are banned not because of what we know they contain, but because of what we fear they might reveal.